Joining us now is the voice of the Iowa State Cyclones. He'll get to rest his voice this spring with no spring game. I think it makes Dave Hunziker jealous because Dave is always like, what are we going to do? The spring game is such a different animal. So this year, we're planning something crazy. I know this for Saturday. We're planning something crazy, but I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. Instead, let's talk Iowa State with John Walters, who, like I said, does get to rest his voice. John, how are you?
I'm doing good, Robert. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. No spring game at Iowa State. Make you sad, or like I said with Dave Hunziker, who I work with on the Cowboy Network. I think if Mike Gundy said, Dave, we're not going to have a spring game this year, I think Dave may do backflips.
Yeah, I think I'll get over it. Hold on a second, Robert. I'm going to put you on a different device here.
Okay.
Sorry
That's
about
good.
that.
I
Getting a
always
little
like
echo here.
being put on a different
No, I
device.
think
Go ahead.
I think I'll be able to get over that. I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to get through the idea of not having a spring game. You know, we didn't have one last year. We were scheduled to have one, and then it got snowed out. And that's just the problem in this part of the country this time of year. There's so much uncertainty to what kind of weather you're going to get. And I'm not sure that the game really accomplishes all that much. I just think the coaches would almost rather have just a good work day and a good 15th practice rather than kind of putting on a dog and pony show for the fans. And I get that some fans will miss it, but not enough to make it more valuable than what the coaches need to get out of that day. And so I don't know. I kind of have a feeling that these spring games are going to go the way of the dinosaur eventually, and that very few people will have them, if any. But we'll see. I know there's places where they draw, 50, 60,000, and they want to keep having them, and I get that. But I don't think it accomplishes as much as maybe it used 2 years ago.
One thing where it does, and Oklahoma State does this to a degree. Lincoln Riley down in Norman does it even to a greater degree. The dog and pony show is not. It's for the fans too, but it's really the one they put on is more for the recruits. And I know you technically work for the university, so you can't mention you're under those NCAA rules. I know for a fact there was a kid from Tulsa that was up in Ames on Saturday and got an offer. A young man that I think is kind of a sleeper, and he put that on his Twitter and all that. So Matt Campbell's very much about the recruiting, and that is what you can do with a spring game is host a lot of recruits and make it a big recruiting. But it looks like Matt has used the spring practice weekends, from what I can tell, to kind of get in as much recruiting as he can, and I know that he wants to.
Yeah, they still scrimmage on the Saturdays. They probably have 3 scrimmages by the time it's all said and done in the spring, and they'll probably still have one this coming Saturday that just will accomplish the same thing as far as the recruiting. The only thing you can't show them is your fans in the stands for the spring game. But, a lot of these kids come in and visit on basketball weekends too, and they see what Hilton Magic's all about, and they see the fan base, and it's not hard today with video to be able to kind of showcase to a kid what the fan base is all about. And Iowa State obviously has a tremendous fan base, and that's a big selling point for Iowa State. But I think you can accomplish it just as well with video as you can with trying to find a live setting in the spring. So I think they're fine on that front. But yeah, that's a very good point, because it is certainly a big time for recruiting. I mean, everybody now with this December signing date and everything, it's like, man, it just pushes the calendar up even more, and then spring becomes huge for starting to work on that next class and starting to get some guys committed in there. And so it is a big time for that. You're exactly right.
John Walters, voice of the Iowa State Cyclones, with us, had a terrific basketball season that, at least according to my bracket, ended too soon, but did have a Big 12 championship, winning the tournament in Kansas City. So that was certainly a great memory for the year already for Cyclone fans.
Oh yeah, that was terrific. I think they played their best 3 days of basketball in the Big 12 tournament. They had been really struggling going into the tournament, kind of found their way when they hosted Texas Tech in the regular season finale. Even though they lost that game, they really played much, much better. And I think went down to Kansas City with some confidence, and then to be able to go down there and win 3 against good teams. I mean, they beat 3 good teams to win that championship, and so that was a very big deal for these guys, and it does put a nice feather in the cap for their season. Obviously, you'd love to have gotten deeper into the NCAA tournament. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. Just had a cold spell that unlike any they probably had all season. I don't know if there's another game all year where they missed 11 consecutive shots, but they did that against Ohio State and lost a close ball game where they had a shot to send it to overtime at the end but couldn't pull it out. But I agree with you that it was a successful season, 23 wins coming off a 13-win campaign, and then to win the Big 12 tournament and reach the NCAA tournament, beat 6 ranked teams. I think those are all real good accomplishments for Steve Prohm's program.
All right, we took a little detour, went basketball, but we're going to go right back to football. I just thought it'd be nice to take that little detour. All right, let's go back to football and Oklahoma State and the Cowboy fans here at Boone Pickens Stadium were I'm sure delighted. They got to see the premiere of Brock Purdy, and it was very good. It was a heck of a premiere. Caught a number of people off guards here, including a sideline reporter. Who is this kid? What the heck? But when you lose David Montgomery, and he's going to go high in the draft, I just talked about it. Hakeem Butler was he was a much better receiver than he probably got credit for in his days in Ames. You got to find some pieces to go around Brock Purdy now. How is that going?
I think pretty well. You're exactly right. That replacing those 2 big playmakers is going to be huge for Iowa State going forward because those were the guys. I would talk to Matt every week, Matt Campbell, and what's the plan this week? Well, we're going to get the ball to number 32 and to number 18. Those were their guys. And Matt and his staff are always very good about if they have players like that, they make doggone sure that they get the football. And they did that with Alan Lazard the year before. And so those are big, big shoes to fill. I think the good thing is, for the first time in a long time, Iowa State fans can feel pretty decent about the offensive line. They've got all 5 starters returning there, and that hasn't always been a strength. So maybe the running game can still be as effective, and I say the running game, maybe not the running back. You might not have the 1,000-yard rusher that David Montgomery was back-to-back seasons, but as a unit, you might be even more successful running the football just because that offensive line should be better. The playmaking, receiving ability of Hakeem Butler, I think, is going to be even harder to replace. But there's some candidates, and I think what you're going to see is Deshaunte Jones and Tariq Milton, who had kind of shared a spot a year ago, both on the field pretty consistently, and they're good playmakers. And so I think Milton has a chance to have a really special year. He's a guy that can do a lot of things on the outside. That's where they're putting him now. And then they've got some other younger receivers that are trying to work into the mix. The other part of that equation, too, from a receiving standpoint, you do have a talented quarterback returning in Purdy, an accurate thrower. That helps. And as far as those big targets, losing Hakeem Butler, losing Matthew Eaton, who was about 6'4", those 2 big, rangy wide receiver targets, the one thing you do have back that you hadn't really been able to rely on in the past is some tall tight ends that are talented and have now proven themselves in the pass-catching element of the game. And Chase Allen and Charlie Kohler, who's from your neck of the woods, those 2 guys, they can go catch some balls, and they'll be a much bigger part, I think, of the offense, and then Dylan Sainer as well. So I think the tight end position will play a bigger role in Iowa State's offense going forward.
If you could just get past the deficiencies of that tight ends coach, Alex Golish, I'm telling you.
I'll tell him you said
that. No, he knows how I feel about him.
Yeah.
All right, and you're right. The tight ends are, and in fact, one of them has his brother join as a grad transfer. Things never really worked for John Kolar to get on the field here in Stillwater, and he's going to spend the final year for college with his younger brother up in Ames, and I certainly hope things are going well for John. He's a great kid.
Yeah, they're excited to add him just to have one more experienced guy in that quarterback's room because you lose Kyle Kempt, and Seth Noland transferred out of the program when he kind of got beat out by Purdy. So all of a sudden, it's a pretty young room. Purdy's a true sophomore. Real Mitchell was able to sustain his red shirt, so he'll be a redshirt freshman this coming year. But, young guys. And so it's nice to have one veteran voice in that room, and that's where John Kohler can step in and really help.
All right, let's go over to the defense. And when you look at that, John, I've always said this in the Big 12, if you let me pick my spots, I want two really good veteran corners because they've got to hold up in this league. We know that. And then give me a good inside guy, nose tackle, or at least a one tech defensive tackle that can, just kind of demand a double team and just kind of hold ground in the middle. Iowa State had that defensively with Lima down low, and then obviously Peavy and who was the other corner?
DeAndre Payne, yeah.
Yeah, DeAndre Payne. Those guys were great. You got to replace those now.
You're right, and the inside part still remains the same. You still have Ray Lima back.
Lima's back. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, Lima is returning. Yep. And you've got some guys around that defensive line for Iowa State, and there have been very few years where I've been able to say this. The defensive line for Iowa State should be an absolute strength for this team, and that allows you to do some other things, I think, when you have a strong defensive front seven. And the linebackers should be good. That front three usually is what they play defensively. That should be very good. They are going to have to replace those corners. You're exactly right, and that's a big deal. Datrone Young and Anthony Johnson played quite a bit last year. Coach Campbell, Coach Haycock, they really like to use two guys at every position on that defense, and that is another huge change from years ago within the Iowa State football program to actually have the quality to be able to play two guys at virtually every position on the defensive side of the ball and trust them. Is something we hadn't been used to, but it sure makes a difference at the end of games and at the end of the season in a long season. But those two corners did get to play some a year ago, and they played well, but they're very inexperienced compared to the guys they're replacing. So that's a big question mark for Iowa State. The good news is behind them you've got some real veteran safeties that have a lot of experience, Braxton Lewis and Greg Eisworth. So that part of the equation holds up pretty well. It's just, can those young corners advance quickly? And that's going to be a big question for Iowa State, but I do feel good about their defense, and I think that should be the strength of this team again this year. And if you have a really, really good defense, which I think Iowa State will have, then you just have to be, above average offensively to have a really good team. And I don't think there's any reason to think, even with the losses of Montgomery and Butler, that this can't be a pretty good offensive football team with Purdy back.
Last thing, and I know this was huge in the off season last year, and in building the stability that Iowa State is seemingly doing in the program. I can tell you this from our last visit there, what they did to Jack Trice Stadium and the way they filled that in on the south end zone, and I mean it was always a tough place to play, but now. It's even louder. It's even more difficult to go play there, and the fans are fanatical with the Cyclones. But the missing link was maybe that stability in the head coaching spot, and with Matt Campbell signing that contract, showing that Iowa State's not just a rung on the ladder for coaches, that it's a destination point for him. I know I talk to Alex a lot because we're good friends, and he talks about, Robert, this is a great place. They support you. They love you. You can, we're getting to the point where we can recruit better here. That there's a stability now for Iowa State football that, John, you've seen it forever. Is this maybe the best place the program's been in?
I think as you sit and look forward and you think about what the possibilities are, I would say yes. There was the 3-year run with Earl Bruce where they won eight games each of those 3 years, and then he took the Ohio State job, and it kind of fell back a little bit. But to be able to look at something and say, okay, now you got back-to-back 8-win seasons. Matt Campbell's won a couple Big 12 Coach of the Year awards, and you look forward at what you got coming back, and not just players but staff. To be able to retain staff, and then on top of that, Tom Manning, who had left last year to go the Indianapolis Colts as the tight ends coach, is coming back into the program in his former role as offensive coordinator. They went without an offensive coordinator last year, and Coach Manning is back in the fold this year. So I think that staff even got strengthened in the offseason. I think there's a lot of reasons to be very optimistic from an Iowa State point of view. You mentioned the facilities and Jamie Pollard and the commitment from the top to having winning football. That's something that I would say is at an all-time high at Iowa State, is just the feeling of everybody's on the same page of wanting to have winning football here on a consistent basis. They're building a brand new football building that will be going up beginning in the spring here, and I mean there's a lot of things going on that are really, really positives, and it is exciting. And you know, the thing about Matt Campbell is he stayed at Toledo for quite a while. He could have left, you know, years before he did leave, but he liked it there, and he's not a guy who's always looking for the next thing. And even when he came to Iowa State, he certainly had plenty of other job offers on the table, but he really liked what he had seen here when he came here and brought his Toledo team in, and just kind of saw it as a diamond in the rough type of place. And Matt would, I think, just soon turn something into a winner. He has tremendous respect for what Mike Gundy has done at Oklahoma State, and to be able to sustain that, it's a model. I know that he asked Coach Gundy out on the field, "How'd you do it?" And Mike said, we got a game to play. I'll talk to you, you know, in a couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, call me in the off season.
Yeah, and they did. I'm sure they did. You know, he has a ton of respect for that, and I think he has a ton of respect for Bill Snyder and Gary Patterson, and just making something special out of the place they were at. And it can be done. It's been proven, and I think with the support here from the fan base, it can be done at Iowa State.
Well, hey, John, I always appreciate our conversations. Again, you know, rest those vocal cords. I'm sure you'll probably get out there and watch a little scrimmage, and heck, you might even start whispering play-by-play to yourself. But you can rest it until. I just hope that you guys get to open the season on time this next year.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a crazy deal last year, and then finishing with Drake in the snow. Wow.
Well, you know, and I won't keep it too long. That really set Iowa State back. I mean, they got off to a 1-3 start, and I think that had an awful lot to do with it, not getting to play that South Dakota State game. They played 4 minutes of that game, 1 possession for the offense, 1 for the defense. But man, when you've got some building blocks that you want to see how they look with the lights on, and then all of a sudden you don't get that opportunity, and now you're going to Iowa City and then hosted Oklahoma. Ouch, you know. And they ended up starting out 1-3, and somehow were able to rattle off 6 straight wins. But I'm with you, man. Let's get that first game in for sure.
Hey, John, always appreciate it. And again, have a great spring and summer. I know we'll catch up with you, but always enjoy our conversations. And yeah, tell Golish I gave him some I razzed him a little bit.
You'll be in a long list of guys that I can say that to him about. But I appreciate it, Robert. Thanks for having me.
All right, John Walters, play-by-play voice for the Iowa State Cyclones. They will finish up this week with no spring game.